Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be covering the Bills win over the Lions. We'll be discussing the Buccaneers, how legit the Buccaneers are as they destroyed the Chargers. We'll discuss the Seahawks and their loss to the Packers. Are the Rams now the clear favorites to win the NFC West? We'll discuss the NBA Cup semifinals, those two interesting games, and then we will preview the NBA Cup final as well. And then please stick around for the end of the show where I'll be discussing whether or not we believe Chelsea and they can win the Premier League this season. Before we start off, if you have a question during the show, we want to hear your input. Is a big part of what makes the show successful, and we thrive on your energies and insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion you just have to share, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. And if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat button at the bottom of the chat box. Send in your super chat. This guarantees that super chat gets read on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We really rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button. Let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can always go to the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast to tip, donate, or leave a comment or question there. Again, we really couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. The Bills, they beat the Lions this past Sunday, and it was an interesting game. It was a lot of offense on the field, very similar to the Bills game that they had over the Rams a week before. The Bills this time around, though, were able to get on the right side of the win-loss column with the outstanding 48-42 win. The Buffalo Bills now have scored a total of 90 points in their last two games, averaging 45 points in the last two. They've been on an unbelievable streak. Josh Allen, he's been playing some unbelievable football. He continues to make his case for MVP. He also continues to make a case for MVP. We saw what Lamar did against the Giants. Yes, weaker opposition, but Lamar Jackson also had himself one hell of a day. To come back off of last week's disappointing loss to the Eagles. Lamar was able to go, he had more touchdowns than incompletions, 21-25 for 290 yards and 5 touchdowns. Also got another 65 yards rushing. He made a great case for MVP as they destroyed for the Giants, but so did Josh Allen in this one, as he went for 23 of 34, 362 yards, 2 touchdowns, passing, 2 touchdowns rushing, just completely dominating the game with both his legs and his arm, and taking advantage of a Detroit Lions team that came extremely depleted defensively. The injuries that they've had, they're relying on third stringers at multiple positions. It's just difficult. The injuries that they've suffered, and eventually they'll mount up. It's what Lions, they've been able to overcome that through good coaching, through their depths, but eventually these recurring injuries, they can become the end of you, and it cost Detroit in this one with with how they performed defensively, and also in some horrible news as well. Cornerback Carlton Davis, he also is probably out now for the rest of the season with a jaw injury. Khalil Dorsey was also carted off with an ankle injury that looked really, really bad. And then Alan McNeil, who just returned from injury, from concussion, he also left the field and went into the medical tent and then onto a cart with an injury on his knee. And he did say And then Don Campbell did say after the same, I don't feel good about either of these guys, Dorsey and McNeil. Normally, if I'm saying not good, it's not good for the rest of the year. And then there's also Carlton Davis, who didn't speak about immediately after the game, but it's looking like his jaw injury will probably be enough. The broken jaw will probably be enough to keep him out for, probably the end of the year, and the regular season. He's expected to undergo surgery, and then he's remain out indefinitely. So the Lions team defensively, they are falling apart for a bit, and it culminated with Jared Goff. By the way, he played himself an amazing football game. He kept them in the game. Him and that Lions offense, high-flying Lion offense, they kept themselves into the game. Number one, it was all Jared Goff because of how dominant Buffalo Bills offense was from the get-go. Detroit were always playing catch-up, and I thought Jared Goff played a hellacious game. He went 38 of 59, 494 yards, had 5 touchdowns. Amon-Ra, 14 receptions, 193 yards and a touch. The offense did its job, and they were able to get themselves semi back into the game. But it just, anytime Detroit can't play 2 offensive possessions in a row, and anytime Buffalo got the ball back, they were immediately going out the other way. And Detroit couldn't do anything on this day to stop them because of all the injuries and just how high-flying the Buffalo Bills offense is. And the funny thing is, a lot of people talked about Jared Goff when he threw for 5 interceptions, but they won that game. A lot of people still decided to talk after the game about those 5 interceptions as a way to discredit Jared Goff. But those same people that were outwardly loud about him throwing 5 interceptions in that game that they won are not saying anything about how he threw for damn near 500 yards and had 5 touchdowns with no interceptions, and they lost. Where's that same energy coming to the defense of Jared Goff, and where's the sympathy for Jared Goff, just like how hard and harsh the critics were over his one bad performance this season? I don't appreciate the hypocrisy of certain media outlets in the way they talk about Jared Goff. But going back to what I was saying, though, and, Lions, as I said, they couldn't play 2 offensive possessions in a row, even though Dan Campbell tried. And look, at the end of the day, I don't agree with it. I don't agree with what he did. So they're down 10 with about 12 minutes remaining. I believe they're down 38-28. And he decides to go onside kick. Completely disagree with that decision. Onside kick. You have a 7% chance to get an onside kick. There is a risk-reward sort of formula that people use when they determine, decision making. There's something that is high risk and low reward. There's something that is high risk, high reward. All that. But this is not high risk. This is extremely high risk with, decent reward. But it's extremely high risk. But the probability of that high risk coming true is extremely, extremely, extremely low. So yeah, you could say high risk, high reward, but the risk is too high. Way too high. 7% chance of getting onside kick. And this is not like the old days, which, by the way, this is part of the reason why I hate this new kickoff rule. You can't do surprise onside kicks. I love that element of football where you could surprise onside kick. You can't do that. You have to, number one, you can't even do an onside kick till the 4th quarter, number one. Number two, you have to announce it. You have to show your hand. The other team knows that an onside kick is coming when you decide to declare an onside kick. So the chances of you getting it are extremely, extremely low. And look, he takes it down to the 3-yard line. Either way, even if they were just to recover that ball, Buffalo Bills did at that there, you're giving them a short field with a defense that wasn't going to be able to get the stop, couldn't even stop them from going 80. Now you're having to stop them from going 50. And, it turned out to be the worst possible outcome. Mac Hollins makes a really good play on the ball and returns it all the way down to the 5-yard line or so. And, becomes easy points for Buffalo. But, yeah, I just don't agree with that. Obviously, you need to steal extra possession here and there. But, you have a better chance at, forcing a turnover out of this Buffalo Bills offense than getting an onside kick. You have a better chance of getting that turnover, and they decide to go onside kick. They don't get it, obviously, and then it's the ball game. But and yeah, Dan Campbell, he's gonna come out after the game and he says, I thought we were gonna get it and all that. And yeah, he's always gonna live and die by his decisions, as he should. He's the coach, and he's a fantastic manager, a fantastic coach. He's rebuilt the culture and all that. But sometimes the risks are just they're just too much for me. The onside kick is too much. Going for it last year on that 2-point conversion to win the game against Dallas, despite being at the 12-yard line, it is too much. Sometimes there is too much of a risk. It's not worth it. So yeah, it's a tough loss for Detroit, because now Philadelphia are right there in terms of that number 1 seed. Philadelphia is right there, with the fact that the Eagles only have 2 losses. The Lions do have, I believe, the tie-breaking edge over the Eagles based on conference record, but it's really going to come down to the wire. And Eagles, they have a gimme schedule. Now that they beat Pittsburgh, they play the Commanders, which could be difficult, and then they close out with the Cowboys, Giants. Not that fair, not difficult. The Detroit Lions, on the other hand, they have a division rival against the Bears. Who knows what could happen there, obviously. Bears took Lions down to the wire last time on Thanksgiving. Maybe they could do it again, who knows. And then they take on a 49ers team that's not going to be playing for anything, more likely than not, but could still compete. They're going away to San Francisco. Then they play Minnesota. There's an opportunity that lines with the defense, with how their defense been playing the past couple of years, to drop one of those. And if Detroit has to go to Philadelphia with the way their defense is, with the injuries that they suffered, I don't know. I think this could be a big loss. As far as Buffalo, it's great for them to bounce back off that disappointing performance, but the main thing with them is, we know they're going to win the AFC East. We know they're going to be pretty up the AFC standings. The one thing they have remaining to fight for is to fight for that number 1 seed. But the problem is, Chiefs ain't dropping any games. Chiefs are, now the Chiefs need to lose 2 of their next 3 against and the Chiefs take on the Texans, Steelers, Broncos. That's not an easy 3-game stretch. 3 pretty decent teams. All teams have at least 9 wins there. All teams at least have 9 wins there, but still, I don't know. I don't see them dropping 2 of those 3. Show break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss the Buccaneers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers destroying the Chargers.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
before the break, we reacted to the Bills' win over the Lions. We move on to discuss the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers destroyed the Los Angeles Chargers to improve to 8-6. The LA Chargers drop now to 8-6 as well. Baker Mayfield had himself a great game, 22 of 27, 288 yards, 4 touchdowns and an interception. Mike Evans, monstrous game, 9 receptions, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irvin was able to run the ball really well as well. 15 carries, 117 yards, average an outstanding 7.8 yards a carry. It was an offensive clinical masterclass by that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, going up against one of the best defense in the league. And this LA Chargers team, they've been playing hellacious defense. Just in the last weeks or so, they held 19 to the Chiefs, 13 to the Falcons. They held the Titans to 17, the Browns to 10, the Saints to 8, the Cardinals to 17, the Chiefs to 17 yet again. The Raiders Panthers to 3. They've been playing hellacious this year, but what Baker Mayfield did, he did something against this Chargers defense that no other quarterback has been able to do. That's hang 40 on them, throw for 4 touchdowns. Out of every other quarterback that's went up against them, he's had the best game. Him, and I thought Joe Burrow also played one hell of a game against them as well. Joe Burrow lost, but Baker was able to get the win. Played a great game, and the Chargers offense does lack that dynamism, that electricity, and they've always been a steady offense. They're always around the 20-23 point range. They never really go off in a game. They did have 34 against the Bengals, but they're about average. They average about 20-21 points, just because they lack that explosiveness. They don't have weapons as well, Besides McConkey, who's an okay player, not a wide receiver 1 player, they don't have much in terms of dynamism on that offensive side of the ball. And with the injury of J.K. Dobbins, it's difficult for them to maintain a run game as well, because J.K. Dobbins' electricity was a big part of that run game. And since he got injured in that Ravens game, that run game has not looked as strong, and against the Buccaneers, they weren't able to. Their top carrier was Gus Edwards for 8 carries and 23 yards. Buccaneers was able to do now. Honestly, this is more for me. This is a bigger representation of the Buccaneers than the Chargers, because we know what the Chargers are. Chargers play some really good defense, and they have an opportunistic offense with a good quarterback, and they're a really hella good coach team. But the talent on that offensive side ain't that good, and it's just that simple, At the end of the day, when you don't have the players on offense to generate the production, you're gonna struggle. And yeah, they're doing 8-6 because of how well they're coached, and they do have that franchise quarterback that can make the play when necessary, and they have a really, really good defense. But they have vulnerabilities to them, and we were kind of knew where they were. They're a team that will get into the playoffs, and depending on if they can get the right matchup, maybe might win a playoff game, but they ain't doing much after that. The Buccaneers, there's an element of unknown with them in the fact that I thought they start off the season, they started off really, really well. I was really impressed with them in their first couple of weeks. I think they started off 3-1. They had that really poor game against the Broncos, but they played, they beat the Lions and Eagles in that stretch. By the way, the Buccaneers, we'll get to that. But look, speaking of the Buccaneers though, they had that game against the Ravens where, they lost. They had missed opportunities in which they lost that game. They ended up losing that game 41-31. Early on, they looked like they were going to be able to get in control of the game. A bad interception by Baker Mayfield in red zone changed it, but then they suffered injuries. They lost Chris Godwin and Michael Evans. They're 2 guys on offense. Chris Godwin out for the year, and then Evans, we didn't know to the extent his hamstring injury. But after that game, the outlook on the Buccaneers season was really, really bad, because, they already lost to the Falcons. They ended up losing to the Falcons the week later, and you're thinking, this team, they might be gone. They're going to be gone because the injuries that they suffered. I thought it was over for them after that Ravens game. I really did. I didn't see no life for them back. And then on top of that, the fact that I thought it was over for them after that Ravens game, they went on to lose their next 3 to the Falcons, which was a really bad loss because that put them 0-2 against them. That gave the Falcons the tiebreaker. Then they lost to the Chiefs and they lost to the Niners on a heartbreaking late winning field goal for the Niners. But since then, they've been able to reel off 4 straight wins and slowly started getting their mojo back, in a combination of that and the Atlanta Falcons slipping as well with everything in their hands, controlling their hands. Suddenly now they're back at the top of the South with the game advantage over the Falcons. Keep in mind, the Falcons do have the tiebreaker, so they only need to match the Buccaneers record to win the division. But still, the Buccaneers, they've gotten themselves back into the lead there, and they've done a remarkably great job now that they've gotten Mike Evans back to regather the mojo. And people don't realize this Buccaneers team, the Lions and the Eagles, the Lions have 2 losses, the Eagles have 2 losses this season. Buccaneers, they beat them both. Both teams that are at the top of the NFC with 2 losses. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat them. They have the pedigree to be able to compete with them. They were 1 possession away from an NFC championship game last year against the 49ers. They lost to Detroit. But they went up in Detroit divisional round and they lost 31-23 or 31-23. They went for a 2-point conversion early on for no reason. They lost 31-23. The ball was in Baker's hands to lead a potential game-tying drive. It ended up being an interception. But that's how close they were. So they have the pedigree. They have playoff experience. This is a team that I won't count out. I think they are legitimately the team I trust the most, or the team I trust the most to pull off an upset over against either the Eagles or the Lions in the NFC. Them and the Rams. I don't believe quite in Minnesota. Green Bay, that's also up there as well. I think Green Bay, because Green Bay are starting to look really good as well. Look, the NFC is going to be very, very interesting. I think the Buccaneers are going to have something to say about it. Of course, I think Green Bay, Detroit, Philadelphia as well. I think the Vikings and Commanders, I happen to not believe in those 2 teams as much. Yeah, it's crazy. The Vikings are 12-2. I just have a hard time believing in them really in that playoff stretch. But yeah, this Buccaneers team is electric. They're dynamic. They have a great quarterback. They have weapons with Mike Evans being back. The defense is opportunistic as well. They're pretty well coached. They're coached by a coach now that has playoff experience up his sleeves. I don't see why I can't see them, making a run in this postseason. And obviously they have to get there first to make a run, and obviously it's not clinched yet. They have that game advantage over the Falcons, but the Falcons do have the tiebreaker. Falcons close off the year, Giants, Commanders, Carolina. Tampa Bay close off their year, Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. Look, I fully expect the Buccaneers they should win those 3 games. They should. The key word is they should. They do have a bad gene, even going back to last year, where they'll drop a random game, kind of like how they dropped the game against the Broncos earlier this year, where you're just scratching your head. So they have that gene in them. But the Falcons, they do have that game against the Commanders. If they lose to the Commanders, the Buccaneers will have to lose two of their games to bring the Falcons back in it. I don't see that happening. So the other 2 games for the Falcons, Giants, and Panthers, those are relatively easy. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss the Seahawks' loss to the Packers on Monday night.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we discussed the Buccaneers. We move on to discuss the Seattle Seahawks. They have lost to the Green Bay Packers in a game that that really was not that close. Packers came out with a strong 14-0 lead and never looked back from there. Finished 30-13. There was a few moments here and there in the third quarter that you thought maybe Seattle could get back into it. But yeah, the Packers, they got it done. And there's a bad loss for Seattle because the Rams, they were able to defeat the 49ers on Thursday. And the Rams did beat the Seahawks earlier this year. So the Rams are sitting now first place in the NFC West, virtue of that tiebreaker over Seattle. And Seattle also has a slight problem. Seattle has to take on Minnesota next week. Minnesota is also a 2-loss team, 11-2 team that don't look like they have much games that they're going to slip for the rest of the season. And you also have the injury of Geno Smith that he suffered in this one. But the Seahawks are optimistic after tests that he should be good to go. But, again, Minnesota is still going to be a difficult opponent. As far as the Rams, they take on Arizona. They take on the Jets, Arizona. And then there's that, game, the Seahawks take on the Rams. Don't forget about that. Let's forget about that now. The Seahawks take on the Rams week 18. It may come down to that. It may come down to that. Problem is, for the Seahawks, they want it to come down to that. They need to match what the Rams do for the rest of the year. And I think the Rams, for the rest of the year, besides that, I think the Rams probably will win their next two games going up against the Jets and Arizona. I think they will go 2-0. I do. I don't believe Seattle will go 2-0 against the Vikings and the Bears. I think they'll lose to the Vikings. Then the Rams will enter with the one game advantage in that final game with then I don't know how then it gets tricky with the tiebreakers and all that, because if the Seattle wins, then they split. Then it'll come down to division record. The division records are dicey as well. I think the Rams are. Let's pull it up actually. So the Rams are 3-1 in the division, while the Seahawks are 3-2. So yeah, and if you assume that the Rams beat the Cardinals, they'll be 4-1. So the tiebreaker will also be 3. Essentially, Seattle can't really lose. Seattle can't lose any of these two games. If they lose to Minnesota, that severely hampers their chances to win the West. Look, even if Seattle, beats Minnesota, which is not happening, I still don't think they'll beat the Rams. I think Seattle is not going to win this division. I think Geno Smith has cost them. He cost them in that Rams game with his red zone interceptions. cost them in this one as well. Bad red zone interception, changed the game, and then he ended up getting injured later on as well. And Sam Howell came in and he didn't really impress as well. Yeah, I'm if I'm a Seahawks fan, I'll be very, very nervous about my chances now to win the division. Now, both of these teams are also Rams, Seahawks. Whoever doesn't win the division are also up for a potential wild card position, depending on if the Commanders can drop that game, and then if a Commanders drop a game, and then if the Commanders do end up dropping a game, then it comes down to tiebreakers and all that stuff. Tiebreakers and all that stuff to get into the playoffs. Between those, I don't want to really get into that. But as far as winning the division, I think the Rams are the clear favorites because, I think they play a little bit of the easier schedule. I think they're the better team. I think they have the better quarterback. I trust if they played against each of the Week 18 game was a win or go home for both teams. I trust Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay more than I would trust Geno Smith and Mike McDonald. Simply comes down to all of that. I mean, I just trust one quarterback coach partnership a lot more than the other. Even though I guess what the Seahawks has been able to do is respectable this season. They've reeled off reeled off 4 straight wins since that bad loss that they suffered against the Rams to put themselves in this position to where they were top of the NFC West in a good position. But now with this loss, with the Rams win, I think the division is to lose for the Rams. And honestly, let's be real. The Rams could cause some major, major headaches for any top team in the NFC competing to win the Super Bowl. The Rams will give them headaches, and the Rams could beat, I'd probably choose them over some of those top teams. Seattle, I think there'll be a bye week for a majority of the teams that are going to make the playoffs. I think there will be a bye week, a rest. I just don't think they're at that level to compete in a playoffs. Don't see it. Yes, they've reeled off the wins and they beat the Jets and they beat Arizona twice. Yeah, they beat the Niners last minute, almost last seconds walk-off touchdown. But yeah, I just don't. Not with Geno Smith. They're not competing at that level, Seattle. They're an okay team, but they're not great. They're not great on either side of the ball. The Rams, they have that man in Matthew Stafford. They have this partnership with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. They're starting to run the ball a little bit better as well with Kyron Williams. He's a threat as well. He had 108 yards actually at the 49ers. He was really big down the stretch. He's at 1,000. He's at 1,000-yard season this year. Kyron Williams. I think Rams are balanced. And then they have pedigree as well. Super Bowl winning coach, Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think the Rams are clear favorites to win the NFC West. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will react to the NBA Cup semifinals and preview the NBA Cup final.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we discussed the Seahawks loss and whether or not that makes the Rams the clear favorites to win the NFC West. We move on to react to the NBA Cup. So the NBA Cup semifinals finished on Saturday, the two semifinals. Not gonna lie, wasn't the most entertaining semifinals. Both games didn't really come down to the wire. I think the Hawks had a good late, good run at it in that third quarter, but overall just couldn't overcome. Giannis's great game, really putting it on the line. We knew he was always going to be big in these one-off games. He was always going to give it his all. You see the way he plays in the All-Star games. Now with the opportunity to reach a final, he was giving everything he had. I do think if there's if there's people that will treat this seriously, it is the Europeans, because the Europeans, they have that. Number one, they're used to the football system of having the league cups and having domestic cups outside of the big prize, in this case the NBA finals, and they're used to it, and the Europeans, they're used to it in their culture, and they treat it seriously. So adding an NBA Cup, it was always going to be treated extremely serious by the European guys, because they understand the importance of domestic cups, domestic trophies. Domestic, I mean, is like within the country, because obviously soccer is a little bit different. There's domestic cups, then there's continental cups, then there's even like world cups. So yeah, regarding that, Giannis 32, 14, and 9, Damian Lillard as well. We know his pedigree of being a real clutch player in this league. He went off as well for 25, 7, and 6. Big plays down the stretch as well for Damian Lillard. By the way, he missed practice. So Chris Middleton, those two are expected to be back for that final that we'll be previewing later. But look, Hawks, they went on a really good run in this tournament. It was unexpected, just like their runs, their playoff runs. Hawks, they sneak up on you. They were able to get in as actually a group winner, just based on, I think the difference was I think the difference was head-to-head over Boston. They were able to sneak in there. And Trae Young, he had a great game to get them past the Knicks in the quarterfinals. He with his 22, 11, and 5. But this time fell a little bit short. I thought he played a really good game as well. Thought he was pretty efficient compared to his standards. He was 50% of the field, had 35 points, hit some, didn't chuck up 3-point shots, went 3 or 5 really good, had 10 assists, even had 7 boards, which is, higher than his 4 rebounds that he does average per game this season. Yeah, it's just at the end of the day, I think the Bucks are finally starting to figure it out as a team after their god-awful start to start off the season. They've climbed up to 5th in the Eastern Conference. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. Just seems like Doc Rivers has finally got some breathing room with this Bucks team, and they're starting to figure it out. And now they get to play a one-off final against OKC. I'm so excited to see that. Speaking of OKC, they got past the Houston Rockets. Look, the Rockets, they did great to make it to the stage, but they always lack that offensive firepower to compete with OKC. It was a great defensive battle between two really good defenses, but I just think the star ability of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, his consistency of him always being able to score 30 points was going to be the difference, because I believe the Rockets are what OKC are without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Well, look, actually, let me rephrase that. This current OKC team without Chet Holmgren is exactly what Rockets are, minus the fact that one team has Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the other team doesn't. I think both teams have a lot of guys that can give you, a 25 on any given night. I think Houston has that with, Van Vliet, Sengun, Jalen Green, even Dylan Brooks, you can add him in the mix as well. You know, players that on any given night, they can give you 20, 25 points, but they don't really have, they don't really have that consistent 30-point per game guy. OKC has a lot of players that can give you 25 points on any given night as well. Hardenstein, Lugan Stewart, Jalen Williams. But the difference is SGA, he'll give you that consistent 30 game in, game out. He will be that star of your team in which games that, in certain games that other guys don't quite show up. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can fill that void, and you have that consistency with him. If you have the consistency with him, that's the difference between being 20-5 and 17-9. That's the difference. Rockets, they don't got that guy. And today, in a game that they played pretty good defense, I thought, to limit what OKC was able to do outside of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, minus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, OKC was held to 79 points. That's pretty good. Defense from the Rockets. The Rockets, they had nobody that was able to get, that scored more than 19. And the person that scored 19 was Emran Thompson, who's averaging 12 points a game. Not really someone that's a reliable scorer. Outside of Emran Thompson, their highest scorer was Jabari Smith and Dylan Brooks. You know what I mean? Jalen Green, they're supposed to be their supposed star boy. He was 1 of 8 from the 3-point line. Just inconsistent. His inconsistent nature strikes again. Shot 5 of 14 from the field, which shouldn't be surprising. The fact that he's only shot 39% this season. He's only a 41% career field goal shooter. And these sort of big moment games, 12 points, 5 of 14, 1 of 8 from 3 is not good enough to get past an OKC team that has a player in Shai. Jalen Green, for him, he wants to take that next level. He needs that consistency that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hasn't been able to develop. Now, there is a difference in between the two. Jalen Green is 22 years old, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 26. But we can't continue to make excuses for him. I mean, in his worst year, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander shot 45% from the field. That's 2021, 2022. He averages for his career, he's a 49% field goal percentage. Jalen Green is nowhere near those sort of numbers. The consistency and the efficiency is not good enough. High volume, inefficient shooting is not the formula for success as a star man of a basketball team. And that's what it is. Jalen Green, he's not a star man of the team. He's not. He's just not. And the Houston Rockets need to get that. And I don't want to be too overly critical for them, because the Rockets team is a young team that's on a steady high rise, and getting here by itself is an accomplishment. They really shouldn't have beat Golden State. Golden State has the more experienced players and has more of the pedigree and all that. Or even a team like the Mavericks, should have, realistically should be the ones here. But the Rockets, they did well to get here right now, and I think they have had a really, really solid season up to this point. But they need to figure out, they need more offensive dynamism, and they need that consistent star scorer on offense, efficient scorer on offense, to take that next level as a team that can compete with the likes of OKC. Now going to the NBA Cup Finals. So the NBA Cup Finals between OKC and Milwaukee. I think this has the opportunity to be a great final. If the Bucks are really the team, if the Bucks are the team that we really we believe that they should be, with the fact that they have Damian Lillard and Giannis, and then who knows what we'll get from Chris Middleton. I'm not expecting much. I'm not talking about just this game, but probably for the rest of his career. This is a Middleton, he had that great year where they won the championship, but since then has slowly, stove off a little bit, and now the injuries he suffered are, starting to get a little bit more numerous. He's missed. He only played 55 games last season. The season before that, he played only 33. Things like injuries are starting to pile up on him. He's not a particularly young man, 33. He's a solid player. He was a great closer, but I don't know if we can see that from the Bucks, if we can see that same Middleton for the Bucks going forward. But they still have Damian Lillard and Giannis, and the expectations of them are still going to be high. They're looking to compete. And in their last 10 games, they look like a team that can, finishing 8-2. But the problem is now they're going up against a juggernaut in OKC that are high flying, number one in the West, playing some really, really good football, really good basketball. And they're doing it without one of their star players as well, and Chet Holmgren. But they have that pedigree. They were missing. They fixed the one issue that they had last year, and that was the proper size, lacking that big, to match up, to play alongside Chet Holmgren. Now you have a player like Harnstein that'll do the dirty work. That'll be able to defend the 5. I think it completely changes the outlook for them. They also were able to replace Josh Giddey with someone that can help them win now a little bit more. So Alex Caruso, plug and pay kind of guy, a great role player. Josh Giddey, he became a little bit unplayable in the playoffs because of his lack of shooting and just his play style just not fitting exactly with what OKC wanting to do. You replace that with Caruso. That's literally the perfect place. We'll do the defending. We'll hit a shot once in here and there. We'll do all the effort, hard work. I think obviously the ceiling is bigger with Josh Giddey, but, Caruso was going to help them win now more. And that's exactly what OKC has, did with that move. And I think they've improved their team from last season in a significant way. And now they're sitting 20-5. That is an absolute juggernaut that Bucks are going to run into this one. So look, if I had to lean the slight favorite, I will. Oh, that's difficult. Because I don't want to choose against Giannis and Damian Lillard in a one-off game, but this OKC team is just so electric, young, youth. I think they are overall the better team as well. Oh, this is going to be difficult. Man, this is going to be difficult. I don't know which direction I should go. Pick them. I'm gonna do the B word way out. I'm gonna say this is a pickup. I don't know. I'm gonna split it 50-50. Split 50-50. I can't really lean either way. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we will discuss Chelsea and whether or not they can win the Premier League this season. Before the break, we discussed the NBA Cup semifinals, and we did a preview of the NBA Cup final. We move on to discuss Chelsea. So, can Chelsea win the Premier League this season? Chelsea win yet again. This time, Brentford is the fallen soldier. Cucurella made it 1-0 in the 43rd minute. Jackson sealed it off in the 80th minute. Brian Mbeumo was able to make half the deficit late in the game, make it 2-1. Mbeumo, by the way, is having a brilliant season this season. He's scored 10 goals, 12 goal contributions in 16 games. He's played a really, really good year. Got on the score sheet yet again in this one as they lost to Chelsea 2-1. And now Chelsea only find themselves 2 points behind Liverpool. Now Liverpool do have a game in hand, a game yet to play. So obviously, that 2 can turn into 5 just, based on what's that extra game for Liverpool. But Chelsea are 4 points clear of Arsenal, who are thought of as the main title challenge to City. And City, speaking of City, Chelsea are 7 points clear of Manchester City. Who would have thought that after opening day, where Man City got that 2-0 lead over Chelsea, that Chelsea will find themselves in this position after 16 games? Chelsea have had a brilliant start, and look, Enzo Maresca, he's going to say what he says after the game, we are not near the level of to win the Premier League. Of course he's going to say that. He wants to lower the load and the pressure and the overall public perception of Chelsea. Chelsea, the best reality for them right now is to try to sneak their way up into really challenging for the title. They don't want the pressure to be there. They don't, they want to sneak their way up. They want to be that surprise. And obviously Enzo Maresca feels like that's the best way to manipulate the media into favor. And there's always, a mindset to making these sort of statements. It's not blindly him just saying what he believes, and whether it is him believe what he whether he believes it or not, I really don't know. But look, the standings say Chelsea are going to be able to compete, and and by the way, Chelsea, they have played Tottenham already this season. They have already played Aston Villa. They have already played Arsenal. They've already played United. They've already played Liverpool. They've already played Manchester City. They've taken on a lot of their toughest opposition through this first stretch. They've played at least, one in every team that's looked at the traditional Big Six, and they're still sitting where they are. Liverpool also have recently have been dropping games here and there. They drop points to Newcastle, drop points to Fulham. Arsenal, they've looked poor in certain games as well. They drop points to Everton. They drop points to Fulham. They've not been good enough. Why can't Chelsea compete for the Premier League? Manchester City, they've been absolutely horrendous of late, They've lost a staggering 5 games in the Premier League through 16 games. I mean, that's not really title challenging there as well. So, yeah, look, Chelsea, right now, you have to say they are title contenders. And that can change really quickly as well, just based on the momentum of how things break. But, Cole Palmer, he's been brilliant for them. He's not a one-hit wonder. The back line, they're starting to build a little bit of cohesion. I think they're starting to look more like a solid back line. Now, Robert Sanchez in goal is still a problem, despite of late been making a few saves here and there. That's still an issue. Maresca, his tinkering. Sometimes Madueke, he, took him off last game. This time he brings them back in. Keeps Sancho as well, but doesn't play Neto, and just his tinkering. He's always constantly making changes. Fernandes, there was a period where he wasn't playing. He's starting to get a little bit more now back into the team. He started against Brentford. Apart from that back line, which has almost been consistent, Cucurella, Colwell, Darabio, Gusto, and Sanchez, that back 4 plus goalkeeper the 5 at the back unit. They've been a lot of tinkering going on here and there, and it seems like well thought out thinkers. It's not, sometimes managers just change things for the sake of changing things. But it seems like Enzo Maresca is tinkering with an end goal in mind. And the players, Sancho, he brought on Sancho, he started off Sancho against Tottenham. Sancho hasn't gotten much starting opportunities in the Premier League this season since he's been at Chelsea. But he started off against Tottenham, and he scored that goal to get them back in the game, completely changed the momentum back into Chelsea's favor in that one. So it shows, this team has quality. This team has a bench, a really, really good bench. And we talk about how great Manchester City and what they've been able to build. But a lot of that has to do with how great Manchester City's bench has been. They've been able to get guys on the bench that play some really, really good football, have some really, really good technical ability, and have the quality to play at the highest of level. Chelsea have that on the bench now. Nkunku, João Felix, these are really, Nkunku, João Felix, Pedro Neto, Jadon Sancho is usually on the bench. These are really, really good players, and if the first 11 players are not getting it done, you have players on the bench that have the ability to get that done. When you have quality, when you have momentum, when you have consistency, from what we've seen so far, there's everything that they need in the book. When you make a book in terms of a Premier League contender, they have everything you need. There's nothing missing with that team, with that unit. There's cohesion. But we need more consistency as well, because it's only been 16 games. But Chelsea are definitely in the title race. As of right now, they're only 2 points away from Liverpool. Yes, with the game in hand, but only 2 points away. If they're not in the title race, then I guess the title race is over. Because nobody's as close as them, Quite frankly, nobody's really even close to them now, They're 4 points clear of third place Arsenal. Thank you guys for tuning into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you once again.